The psychology of art and drawing. It's something people mention, but rarely dive into with any real depth. What I mean by that, and when it's talked about, it often feels empty, pretentious, even. Like, some artists are just talking in circles, hiding behind, a veil, I guess. Acting like, they're special, like no one else can do what they do. They're just so unique, right, and quirky. But that's not what being a true artist is about. Even saying the word true artist feels pretentious. What does that even mean? What's a true artist? I like to think, it's the ones who don't chase attention. It's the ones, they chase trying to be better, grow, learn. It's funny, when I meet these people, they're over the age 30. You know what I mean? They're older, they're wise, they live life. They don't care about, the attention. That is a byproduct, right? When you get better and you put your work out, you're going to get attention by everybody who can't do anything besides a stick figure, right? But true artist is really just someone who wants to just get better. Leave me alone, let me just get good and then have fun, right? So, most tutorials and teachers focus on the how, right? Like how to do art, drawing, that they focus on the techniques, the history. I don't like the history. Anyways, that's another thing. And, the tools. But very few talk about the mind behind the work, like the mindset and what you go through, right? The battles and, the struggle, what the video is going to be about. The psychology, helping you understand the inner game so your outer game can level up fast. So I'd like to think of it as two paths, right? And when learning how to draw, they look similar on the surface, but the approach, that's what makes all the difference. In a way, the first path, I'm just gonna say it's like the fine art route. It's and it starts at a young age, because it's when you start to draw, right? And if you're older and you want to learn how to draw, you could take this route too. It starts with copying, and that's normal, especially when you're young. We copy everything we see. It begins in school, right? Sketching from still life, tracing figures, copying photos, anime, comics. Then even in college, it's the same idea, just more advanced. But eventually you do hit a turning point. You do go from copying to creating, from relying on references to trusting your, instincts. And you may think to yourself right now, well, how does that happen? I'm tired of copying stuff. I've been there. It's all I do. It's all I have. It's the only place I have confidence. How do I start creating for my own? Right. See, when you're copying, you're not just tracing shapes. You're training your memory. Every time you draw an eye or a hand or a face, you're building a mental library. You're storing reference points you'll come back to later without even realizing it. So when someone says, "Wow, you drew that from your head? That's insane." What they don't realize is you're not drawing from one perfect image stored in your brain. You're recalling tiny pieces. So if you're drawing like Superman, right? You're gonna, the cape, the symbol, the pose, and as you draw, right, your memory sharpens, right? You start with one spot and then you move on to the next, right? But as you keep drawing it, right, it becomes like a feedback loop, and the image essentially starts to draw itself as you go. The image goes to your brain projects the image just more onto the page, right? And that's the power, of mileage with all that copying, right? When you start to, not look at something. That's how copying trains your, we call deconstruction muscle, the part of your brain that knows how to break things down and rebuild them on paper. One thing like, one thing I said a lot, well, I didn't say it a lot, but I said it quite often to, friends and peers, in college, was if you don't understand it, you can't draw it. But what I meant was not like you can't, like no, you're not allowed. No, well, in a way, yes. But what I meant was don't just draw random shapes and hope they look right. If you don't understand the form, the structure, and the why behind it, your drawing will always feel off. But once you understand something, you can make creative decisions. You can improvise, design, explore. That's how you develop a style. A style isn't something like you chase. It's something that emerges when you start making confident, informed decisions in your work. I don't think I have a style. Others have said I do, but I don't really care if I do or don't, because I just like to make stuff. I like to make things I like, that I like, right? And if it looks different, because the character looks different, right? But I wouldn't. Everyone tries to chase a style, and the number one answer you'll get from everyone is, "We'll draw for fucking 20 years, and it'll happen." I'm gonna do a whole nother video on style later, but we're moving on. So that's the first approach. The first approach is if you copy enough, you'll retain the information in your head to where you can just put it back on paper, and then it's like a puzzle. You start putting things together as you go. The next one, the next approach, right, when it comes to like learning how to draw, is it's studying, right? It's often overlooked because, well, it's boring. I'd call it like the Da Vinci method if you're going to think of studying an art. It's like copying, but more focused, more surgical. Instead of drawing the entire face, you zoom in on just one feature, right? If you want to draw the nose, focus on, every aspect of the nose, the lips, right? The eyes, and study it from every angle, probably every lighting, the form, everything. And, and if you need to, try different mediums. Do it in paint, do it in charcoal, watercolor, right? Learn other mediums too if you need to. Maybe some other mediums help you learn faster. I know that happens for people. But, it's repetition. It's just like anything you want to learn, it's repetition, right? You want to get good at something, repetition. You want to get faster at the mile, do it all the time. You want to get bigger in the gym, go every day. It's no different in art. And, it builds understanding way faster than just like how to draw hands, how to shade, how to draw animals from like any angle, how to, shade metal, right? They're helping you study, not copy. If I want to draw a deer like a pro, sure, I can copy a few images, but if I won't do anything. But if I study them, really break them down, how the nose looks, in general, how the eyes are formed around the skull, things like that. And I'm right, like, you're not drawing from your imagination, you're drawing what you see, so essentially you're copying, but at the same time you're dissecting, right? You're really breaking them down, and that, after you draw them enough, you'll be able to draw them, from your imagination, and then simplify it. Studying isn't glamorous, but it's efficient, and it will make you efficient quicker. And once you've done it enough, the knowledge becomes yours forever, in a way. Drawing is if you don't use it, you lose it, but it takes a very long time. So that's the other route, right? One thing I don't hear people talk a lot, right? Or it's a question you ask yourself, is you watch a YouTube tutorial, you try to follow along, and your drawing doesn't look anything like the one in the video, and you're sitting there like, why? Right? I'm watching 10 hours of drawing videos. Why am I not getting any better? Right? I mean, well, there's many reasons. Like the proportions are off, the line work's too heavy, maybe your curves are too stiff or the shadows are too soft. I don't know, right? That frustration you feel, that part of the learning process, well, that's the discomfort of deconstruction. The thing is, there's no race to get perfect, there's no race to it, right? Especially on the first try. If you're trying to do things on the first try, then you're practically, you're gambling. The whole goal, to art and drawing is to understand. Understand what you're looking at and how to break it down so you can apply it to paper at your own pace, right? Like everyone's gonna be at different levels, different speeds. People are gonna get understand it quicker, right? But it's at your own pace. It's not a race, right? You're gonna learn. The only way to learn through anything, right, is through trial and error, right? And then another thing would be is like how do you make it fun? How do you make learning art, right, fun? Like I read in a book not too long ago. It was like one of the best athletes, the best athletes found ways to make their workouts fun, their teaching moments fun, right? And one big tactic, Steph Curry from the Warriors, his coach turns everything into a game, right? It turned into a game, which makes him focus on the game and not technique entirely. But he's going to have technique and repetition, but most importantly, like repetition and driven and everything else, right? And it's what he always does. Thing is with art though, can't really make it into a game. So what I did, and I learned, and other people do too, is turn what you're learning into an art piece, right? So for example, let's say I want to practice anatomy, right? All the muscles on the body. I'm not gonna grind a muscle diagram, right, for like 3 hours. That'd be so boring. I'd be annoyed, right? Unless I was into, like, I want to be a doctor or something. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna draw like the Hulk, right? He's big, exaggerated, easy to study, and it's fun. If I want to learn how to draw cars, I'm picking my favorite car. I'm not gonna draw a boring car, right? I'm gonna learn from the car I like. If I want to know how to draw cars, I'm still studying, but it feels like I'm creating. And when you enjoy the process, you're gonna stick with it longer. And at the same time, you can make it for your portfolio, right? Because your portfolio is, from beginning, not knowing what to do and learning, right? How you learned along the way, how you're getting better. It's your progress. So that's a big tip, right? Just convert what you're trying to study or learn or practice into a piece of work that's in line with that. Now, lastly, let's talk about the mental battle every artist faces, right? You'll have those moments where when you're working, everything feels great, looks great, every line has its purpose, its meaning, everything's clicking. And then next moment you're drawing and everything looks like shit. You don't like it, the vibes are off, and you feel like the piece is falling apart, and you want to quit. Right now you're thinking to yourself, or a question you could ask yourself is, well, why do I feel that, right? Why is this happening, right? Some artists call it the valley of suck, right? You're stuck in the valley. Stuck in the valley where everything just sucks. I like to call it head in the trenches. So you're not supposed to be feeling amazing every time. And then when you do, it fades, right? Even after you post something you like, or you not even post, but you know, you create something like you post it and you like it a lot. Usually in beginning phases, you hold on to it for a while, right? You know, you'll still enjoy it, and then later on, when you get better, things you don't really care anymore, and also you probably won't like it, right? I'll post something, I'll probably like it for like a week or less. Some depends on the piece. A week. Sometimes I post it, you know, make it, post it, and I'll like it for like a day. And why? Well, it's obvious that you're improving. Even as you are done, even as you're working, you're improving, right? That's the whole point, and you're always growing. So at the same time, so are your standards. A good thing to think about is like, why you're shaping your work. Your work is shaping you. Or like, there's a song I heard once. I don't know, it was from Malcolm Moore. We all probably heard it. One lyric he had was, "A true artist won't be satisfied." So I guess that's the sacrifice. Or the greats weren't great because their birthday could paint. The greats were great because they paint a lot. Both summarizing the things I just said. You'll never be satisfied with your work because you're always getting better, and that's the sacrifice as an artist. And the greats, right? The people you look up to, well, they weren't born with it. They worked towards it. They worked at it every day. You always want more. You're always chasing better. I'm telling you right now, that feeling will never go away. From day one to even when you're really skillful, you will still think you're not that skillful. You'll understand to, you know, read a room and know where you fall in it, right? What place you're in, maybe, but you'll still always want to be better. And to that, I say, welcome to being an artist. So, my final statements: keep drawing, keep studying, keep pushing through the trenches, line by line, paint stroke by paint stroke, because in this never-ending war of mastery, there is no final victory, only progress. And as the Imperium would say, for the skill, for the grind, and for the glory, there is only art. Good luck. The trenches await.